This is a tutorial about the building control mode for Cities Skylines, which was released in June 2023. So this mod will open every time you try to plop a building. So it can be a park, it can be any kind of building. So for example, a hospital, a police, a unique building, a residential, any type of building, and the building control window will open right here on the left. And it has three properties that you can set for every building. The first one is the placement mode. So it can be roadside, shoreline, on the ground, etc., etc. So different places you can place the building. The second one is the surface texture. No texture, gravel or pavement. And then the third one is the terrain flattening. No flattening, flatten the building base only, or flatten the entire block. So if it's a 4x4 asset, it will flatten 4x4. If you choose only the building base, then only what's underneath the actual building will be flattened. So let's look at some examples. For example, all of these assets are assets that I downloaded from the workshop, and by default they all came without a base. So if you look at all of them, they have no actual base. Okay, they're just the ground beneath them. So these are industrial assets, these are all commercial assets, and even residential assets. So they have a little path that goes to the front door, but beneath them it's just the ground. So the first thing that building control allows us to do is put a base to building. So if I choose, let's say, this little shop right here, the building control will open, and I can choose surface texture, pavement, and now when I plop it right here, it will have pavement beneath it. If I choose gravel, it will be gravel, and of course the no texture is the asset default, so there's nothing below it. So that's the first thing we can do. And of course it works the other way. So an asset that comes with a base, we can remove it by choosing no texture. The second thing we can do is choose the placement mode. So by default, this asset will be placed near a road. It will snap to a road. If I try to put it here, it says building must be placed roadside. Okay, that's the default of this asset. However, I can choose any of this placement mode. For example, I can choose on the ground, and now I can just basically put it anywhere that's not on a road, and it will work. So, and not water as well. So I can put it, for example, right there. Okay, and it will be okay. Now, the thing to note that if you put it far from the road, then you'll have a problem with the service vehicles accessing the building. So what you need to do is click on the building. You use the building spawn points mod, and then you'll need to move the spawn point next to the road, something like that. And then the service buildings will use the spawn point to service this building. The third thing we can control with the building control mod is the terrain flattening. So I selected one of the commercial buildings, and this is a very sloped area. So I first choose no flattening. Let's place it right here. Then I'll choose flatten building base, place it here, and flatten entire block, and place it right here. And let's take a look. So you can see when there is no flattening, it's really sloped and the building just sinks into the ground. When you flatten just the building, So the building itself sits on rather flat ground, but there's a slope on both sides. And when you choose flatten entire block, the whole area is mostly flat. Let's see a practical example of using the building control mode. So we want to place some commercial assets right here next to the shore on this lake, but we don't want them to be right on the road. So we use find it to find the commercial assets. This is a coffee kiosk. When I click on it, the building control will be opened. The placement mode, I'm going to choose on the ground. Shoreline would mean it has to be right on the water. So I'm using on the ground. So this will allow me to place it anywhere here. And then the surface texture, no texture. So I don't want to be anything below it. And then I'll just plop it right here. And as you can see, it's in a perfect position. It has no base, only the ground below it. Looks great. The only thing I have to make sure is that there is access to service vehicles. So I click on it, the building spawn points. As you can see, it's in the wrong place. So I'll have to drag it right next to the road and also turn it around. So I go to the A or the angle, I click on shift and use my mouse wheel 1, 2, and it will turn it to 180. Right click. So now we have the spawn point right next to the road. The service vehicles can access this building. Yeah, great. Let's take a look at another example where the building control comes in handy. So as you can see, this is a very sloped terrain here. And when I try to plop a small playground right there, by default, it doesn't flatten the ground and it's not very practical. Of course, we can terraform the entire area, or instead we can just use the building control, choose flatten entire block, and plop the playground right there. And as you can see, it will automatically flatten the area and we'll have a very nice flat ground for our playground.